Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Heena Siddiqi show on Canada One TV. उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब लोग खुश होंगे, खैरियत से होंगे, जहाँ पर भी होंगे। एक और एपिसोड के साथ हाजिर हो गए हम आपके सामने। हर बार की तरह हम लेकर आते हैं आपके सामने एक मेहमान, एक टॉपिक और एक एक्सपीरियंस। इस शो के थ्रू हम आपको ले जाते हैं एक ऐसी जर्नी पे जिनसे हम रूबरू होते हैं हमारे मुल्क के हालात से, लोगों की सिचुएशन से, उनकी स्टोरीज से और उनके टैलेंट से। तो आज का जो हमारा शो है बहुत ही ख़ास है। क्योंकि ये ताल्लुक़ रखता है आप लोगों की निजी ज़िंदगी से, हमारे मुल्क के हालात से, आने वाले कल से और होने जो हो रहा है आज में। तो हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं एक बहुत ही ख़ास मेहमान, आए हैं सस्कैचुआन से और बातें करेंगे हमसे आजकल के हालात की, जो कि हमारी जो गवर्नमेंट है उनकी पॉलिसीज़ की। मुल्क के हालात दिन ब दिन बदलते चले जा रहे हैं। बेरोज़गारी बहुत बुरी तरह से फैल रही है और क्राइम बढ़ता जा रहा है। ऑटो थेफ्ट, मसले मसाइल जो हैं मुल्क में बढ़ते जा रहे हैं एक के बाद एक। तो मुझे बहुत सारी ईमेल्स आ रही थी कि आप इन मुद्दों पे, इन जो हमारे कंसर्न बढ़ते जा रहे हैं उन पर बातचीत करें और जवाब मांगे सरकार से या उनके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव से। तो हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं आज MP Garnett Genuis, a conservative member of parliament representing the constituency of Sherwood Park, Port Saskatchewan. Additionally, he served as a shadow cabinet minister of international development. Well, let's welcome MP Garnett to my show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you and have a chance to chat.
How are you doing tonight?
Very well.
How was your flight?
Very well. Flight was good. It's been a busy week. I was at the Prospectors and Developers Conference earlier this week, then in Ottawa for committee, now back here.
Lots of back and forth.
Lots of back and forth. I spend, I think, about a third of my time at home, a third of my time in airports, and a third of my time in Ottawa. So
right, yeah. Must be really busy.
Yeah.
I have seen you on your YouTube channel in news and in a lot of like, you know, standing up for the community, for Canadians, in terms of talking about the current policies, scams, and crime, you know, whatever is currently happening in the country. So we are very much looking forward for this conversation. This is an open conversation, and I hope to get some insight from you on this sensitive topic tonight.
Great, thank you so much.
So let's start with something which is, like, you know, a very much controversial, you know, topic. Which is, I want to start with ArriveCan app.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about it? Like, people are saying that the budget was, you know, they represent a huge amount of money that, you know, which is not legit for app like, you know, ArriveCan. And can you talk about the numbers and the details which you can, you know, bring to the audience?
Yeah, so let me just kind of simplify it down for your viewers to really, because this is a huge scandal. It's a scandal that has different facets to it, but the core of it is this, that we've identified this problem of the government giving contracts to very small, insider, well-connected firms who don't do any work, who just subcontract all the work, right? So
they're not the actual people who are working on it.
Exactly. So the government says, okay, well, we need to contract out this job, and there's been a huge growth in the public service at the same time as there's been a huge growth in contracting out. So we're spending more on all fronts, but. Basically, it's like if you needed someone to paint your fence and you paid me $100 to paint the fence, and then I went and hired my brother to do it for $50, right? Yes. And then I just collected the middleman fee for doing nothing. Now that wouldn't make a lot of sense for you. At some point, you would say, well, why don't I just hire the guy who's actually doing the work, and it would cost less, right? And in fact, what we're seeing is not just that one level, but multiple levels of different firms. So there, on the ArriveCan app, $60 million were spent, and chunks of that money were pocketed by very small staffing recruiting firms.
Right.
That don't have any capacity to actually do the work of building an app.
Okay.
So
accounts were not clear, like not properly,
Well, the issue is you had these well-connected insider middlemen, and their only expertise is in how to get government contracts. They get a lot of government contracts, then they subcontract it out to others to do the work. So on ArriveCan, GC Strategies, again, two-person company, no actual work, they got close to $20 million. There's another company, Dalian. Incredibly, one of the two people at Dalian is actually a government employee. So he's an employee in government, and he's benefiting from a contracting out to his company. In fact, his own department that he works for has contracted out to his company. Right. And so they got $7.9 million on ArriveCan, again, receiving work and passing it on. And the system is designed in a way that allows these middlemen who do nothing to get massive amounts of money. And there's compounding aspects of this. So the Auditor General reported that at one point, GC Strategies actually sat down with people in the government to decide on the terms of a request for proposal that they would then make a proposal on. So that's effectively that shouldn't be allowed. That's a rigging of the process.
What do you think can be done to get a better picture out and sort this out?
Yeah, well, and part of the challenge, the Auditor General identified that there's a complete absence of records in many cases, which means either records weren't kept or records were destroyed by someone. There's allegations about emails being deleted. The app didn't work very well as a result of all these problems. The app went through 177 versions, many of which weren't properly tested. Over 10,000 people were sent into quarantine who weren't supposed to have been sent into quarantine just because of a glitch in the app. So Conservatives have put forward a motion that passed the House of Commons saying we need a complete accounting of the money that was spent, and the government should seek to actually get back the money that was spent. We need to end all the corruption we're seeing in the government. And we've also said we want to have an audit of not just the ArriveCan now, but of all the work that GC Strategies has gotten. GC Strategies has gotten a lot more money from this government. They've done very well in the last 8 years. Their company was just founded in 2015 when Justin Trudeau took office, and they've done very well in the last 8 years. While many
what
Canadians
Liberal has to say,
well, so. The Liberals' line on this is basically to say we're surprised, we're victims too, right?
Okay. So they got scammed too?
Well, they're the ones that are in government. They're the ones that are supposed to be responsible for the system. And if you had one of them on, they would say, "Oh yes, it's terrible what happened, but it's not our fault." Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't think Canadians buy that the people who they elect to run the government,
but it was the public's money.
So they're trying to blame everyone else, but ministers have responsibility for, of course there's delegated authority exercised in the public service, but ministers are responsible for the framework, the overall policy direction of the government, and for demanding changes when things are going wrong along the way.
Definitely, that's my next question to you. What about the policies and the fiscal?
Well, and there are lots of different issues here, right? I think the systematic failure of just this contracting to contracting to contracting. But then we also have to add, who benefited from this, right? There were specific companies that got very rich who had close relations with people in the public service.
Yes.
In one case, the company was owned by someone who was in the public service.
Yes.
So there were people that benefited from this, and there was shoddy record keeping, a lack of tracking, and kind of suspicious behavior.
Right.
So there's there's policy problems, there's behavior problems, and then there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm not responsible," right?
But so nobody's taking the
yeah, and it has an impact on Canadians because like this is how we end up with out of control spending, massive deficits.
No accountability.
It's when there aren't basic controls around, like there was no. As far as we can see, there's no sort of budget planning around this app, right? At all. It was just, money kept flowing out the door to anyone and everyone. It speaks to just what our government has become in 8 years of Justin Trudeau. And we need to get back to basic kind of fiscal probity, concern for responsibility.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes.
And we should have people in the government who are able to do these kinds of basic tasks without contracting them out, or at least, if we're going to contract out, the government should be able to find the person and contract out to them directly instead of having multiple levels of middlemen.
People, yeah, exactly, definitely. Well, it's time for us to take a short break. We will be back shortly. You don't go anywhere. We'll come back soon.
मेरा नाम अनुर मकसूद है। पाकिस्तान के हालात तो आप टेलीविजन पे देख लेते हैं, फोन पे सुन लेते हैं। मेरे पास फोन वो नहीं है, टेलीविजन है मगर मैं खोलता नहीं। मैं क्रिकेट देखता हूँ सिर्फ कि कौन आउट हो गया, कौन आउट नहीं हुआ। यहाँ कोई आउट ही नहीं होता। एक जगह जो आ गया वो आ गया, फिर उसी का हुक्म मानते हैं हम लोग। पदर साहब जो है, चौधरी साहब, उनकी ख्वाहिश पे मैं आ रहा हूँ कनाडा, कैलगरी, वैंकूवर और टोरंटो। मेरी ख्वाहिश है कि मैं आप लोगों से मिलूँ आके। मुझे पता है आप लोग मुझे चाहते हैं, मैं भी आपको चाहता हूँ। जो लोग दूर रहते हैं ना, उनमें बहुत ज़्यादा मोहब्बतें होती हैं और इसी मोहब्बत की वजह से मैं आ रहा हूँ।
Welcome back to the Heena Siddiqi show on Canada One TV. Tonight we have with us MP Garnett Genuis, and he's a Conservative Member of Parliament representing the constituency of Sherwood Park, Ward, Saskatchewan. Additionally, he serves as a Shadow Cabinet Minister of International Development. Let's welcome him again. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we were talking about, before going on break, about the ArriveCan app and the fiscal policies and the other challenges in the country right now. I want to touch on unaffordable crisis. I would say the crises are impacting, every Canadian, and it's getting difficult for Canadians to survive even, the housing crisis, I want to touch on auto theft, things are, going worse and worse month by month. So let's start with this unaffordable, inflation, which is hitting really bad to the country.
So to kind of frame all of this, our priorities in this session of Parliament: axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. That's what Conservatives are pushing. And a big part of that is the affordability crisis we have, and that affordability crisis is because of high taxes that are impacting the cost of things.
High interest rate as well.
Exactly, and that's the result of very high government spending has driven up inflation. So we've seen efforts to counteract that inflation, which have the impact of higher interest rates. So at the root of this is the need to control government spending. So our proposal to fix the budget is to have a dollar for dollar rule. Every dollar of new spending has to come from somewhere. It's common sense that if you're spending money, that money has to come from somewhere. And if the government is making spending promises without saying where that's coming from, well, that's adding to the deficit, adding to the debt, and driving inflation. Because
this is not fair to get money from the people and just not spending it or not putting it into right places, and
exactly.
People have to suffer.
Yeah.
People are migrating from here.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about the Arrive scam issue. There's so much waste in government, in particular, so much spending on external consultants, IT consultants, management consultants. We have a public service whose job it is to run the government, administer services, and yet while the public service is growing, we're spending more and more money on outside consultants. Let's rein that in, use the money more responsibly, and let the people who are hired by the government, outside of exceptional circumstances, let those people do the work. So fix the budget with a dollar for dollar rule, but we do also see how what's driving the affordability crisis is certain particular categories of goods where other government policies have led to increased costs. So the price of food is going up. Other costs.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's double. It's just the double.
Yeah, and we see how with the carbon tax that impacts that on multiple levels. The carbon tax hits the farmer who grows the food, the trucker who brings the food, the grocer who sells the food, the family who's bringing that food home. And we have therefore called for axing the tax completely. We've got a private member's bill, C234, to start by axing the tax on farmers to help control the cost of food. Liberals are opposed to that and have tried to undemocratically lobby senators to block that bill, even though it has a majority of support in the House of Commons. So addressing the price of food by axing the carbon tax, and then the price of homes, right? So many young people are giving up on the dream of home ownership.
Current homeowners are giving up on their mortgages because they can't afford it anymore because of the high interest rate.
Yeah, exactly. So the double whammy now of people that are renewing their mortgage, the high mortgage rates on top of the very high costs. So a big part of that is we're not building homes at the rate we need to.
Definitely.
Part of our plan is to build the homes.
How many people are landing in Canada every month, and compared to the housing, placement for them, there is no arrangement.
Absolutely.
For people, they are suffering in the basement. Especially, I talk about international students. They're like in a very miserable situation because in one unit there are like 25 people living. That's
crazy. I mean, the supply has to keep up with the demand.
Yes.
Right. So if the government likes to talk about immigration,
right?
But we need to talk about the quality of life, the experience of people when they come here, and that's why the
quality of education as
well. Exactly. So there's all the issues around international students, of course, but at a macro level with housing, we are building fewer homes today than we did in the 1970s.
And why is it so? Why there was not much focus on building up housing?
Well, so it's the private sector that builds homes, but the cost of government that is being piled onto the construction of those homes, as well as the regulations that make it very difficult to construct new homes in this country. We have a big problem of multiple levels of government piling on taxes, regulation, other costs associated with new home construction. So our plan is to remove the gatekeepers, reduce those barriers by giving firm targets to municipalities. We're not going to micromanage how they do that, but we're going to tell municipalities they have to meet certain targets in terms of new home construction. If they don't meet those targets, they're going to lose money in terms of federal transfers. If they exceed those targets, they're going to get a bonus. Because we have so much federal money that flows to other levels of government in the form of transfers for specific things. One of those is for transit, right? So the federal government is funding the expansion of transit infrastructure. It's common sense to insist that there be permission for significant new home construction around and even on top of that new transit station. If it's the federal government, as we've seen in the past, the federal government is funding that transit infrastructure, but they're not insisting on new home construction, then that's going to continue to exacerbate the supply problem. So we will use the spending power of the federal government to incent municipalities to push all other levels of government to get the costs and the barriers associated with excessive government out of the way so that new homes will be built in this country.
I would like to ask you now about the auto theft.
Yeah.
Like it's going, worse day by day. Canadians are complaining what your government is doing or taking an action and the matter of auto theft and any support, any policies or any, something is going on right now?
Yes, we put forward a private member's bill on this, and there's a few different issues that are going into it. I mean, there's repeat offenders, right?
Okay.
Jail, not bail, for repeat, especially for repeat violent offenders. We've proposed legislation to restore mandatory minimums and ensure proper sentencing around those that are involved in car theft. Another piece of our plan on that is around export. What's often happening to people is that their cars are being stolen and they're quickly being sent out of the country. So we've put forward a proposal to increase the capacity at the border to buy sufficient scanners to make sure we are going forward. We're going to be able to identify and prevent stolen cars from leaving the country, and to just kind of connect the topics we've been talking about.
Right.
Really sad to think about CBSA.
Right.
Our border agency that should be responsible for screening to make sure your stolen car doesn't leave the country.
Right.
They're the ones
Yeah.
that spent $60 million at least on the Arrive Scam app, right? So when we could be investing resources through the same department
Right.
in preventing stolen goods from leaving the country, instead we have all these shady middlemen companies that are cashing in instead. So it's about priorities, right? Our priority is cutting the wasteful consultants, cleaning up the corruption, and putting those resources into protecting Canadians' economic well-being by stopping the export of stolen cars.
What do you have to say about this recent auto? There was a conference.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about it? How is it going to?
Well, after 8 years of presiding over failure, the Liberals' big idea is always to have another meeting in Ottawa. Right, on grocery prices, they said we're going to have a meeting in Ottawa about it, and we're going to talk about it. On auto theft, and I think after 8 years, people have had enough of the talk and they want to see action. So we put forward concrete proposals on what to do on auto theft, reversing some of the changes the Liberals made on sentencing, so that people who commit serious crimes do serious time, and that people who are repeat offenders are not regularly getting out on bail so they can commit crimes on bail. Right. And then in the particular case of vehicle theft as well, addressing the export issues. We have proper scanning at our borders. These are concrete plans, and the Liberals are supposed to be the ones solving this problem. After 8 years, if the best they can come up with is another meeting, that's obviously not going to cut it.
Well, thank you so much for your valuable insight and your time for
Thank you so much
tonight, my show. It's the first time you're here, and I'm really honored to talk with you. This open discussion was really important for our people, and this was very much long due. So thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. I hope you'll have me back.
So this was MP Garnett Genuis, from Conservative Member of Parliament, representing the constituency of Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan. Well, I hope you like our today's episode, as we have discussed a lot of issues and rising concern for our country and for our people. I hope you like our today's episode. Don't forget to write me on Heena Siddiqi 007@gmail.com. I'll see you next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on Canada One TV. Good night, Shaba Khair, Allah Hafiz.